Hello, I am the Wrestling Man, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be running through part 2 of what will be a multi-part video. This is of course the continuation on the Hall of Fame bit I started last week. With that being said, I do have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get on this. We were at 2005 inductions, and Hollywood Hulk Hogan, aka Terry Bollea, was one of the ones inducted in 2005. There, of course, has been a lot of controversy with him lately, and if you guys want me to cover that, just let me know down below. The Hot Rod, Rowdy Piper, unfortunately, he would go on to a few years later and pass. Cowboy Bob Orton, Randy Orton's father, inducted the same year. I do believe also Randy Orton had that same year either started his Legend Killer gimmick or had gotten his first title, one of his first major world title reigns. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, please, by all means. Of course, the Mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart, was inducted that year. Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. And if any of you do not know who he is, dear God, please go back and watch some stuff from the 1980s and the early 90s. Just for the love of God, please don't watch him in WCW. That was the worst idea he ever had. Mr. Wonderful. Nikolai Volkov. A lot of people, if you don't know who he was, he of course teamed with the Iron Sheik back in the 80s. Forming kind of an Axis Powers sort of tag team that went after Hogan and Sergeant Slaughter a lot. Of course, the Iron Sheik was also inducted the same year, because after all, you can't induct one without inducting the other. We saw Bret Hart inducted in 2006. Eddie Guerrero, who was inducted after his heart attack. At least I do, if I remember right, that's what killed him, was a heart attack brought on by years of drug abuse. Mean Gene Okerlund in 2006 was also inducted. Sensational Sherry, which, if again, that's another one. If you don't know who Sensational Sherry is, watch some old videos on YouTube or on the network, and, of her. She was a very famous female wrestler for during the 80s. She was at one time a WWF Women's Champion. I think she at least held the belt a couple of times in the WWF under McMahon Sr. Let's see. She also was the one who came up with HBK's theme song. In fact, she was the one that kind of came up with the whole HBK gimmick. Or at least she was the one that really helped him learn how to get it over. She managed for Harlem Heat at one point in WCW. And I forget who else she's managed for. Those are just off the top of my head, the ones I can remember. So, Verne Gagne in 2006 was also inducted. Oh God, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas, Saba Simba. Why, Tony? Why would you do that one? Saba Simba, really? I mean, I get it. It was kind of a big thing at the time, because you had a lot of, at the time, you had a lot of people of color going out and, going back to their roots, so to speak, and were going to Africa and coming back and calling themselves like Shaquan, Madon, whatever. And at least this time it was somebody doing a colored gimmick that was actually colored. Versus, say, I don't know, Akeem, the African Dream. But we'll not get into that today. The American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, was inducted in 2007. Which, by the way, I am hitting that class now. American Dream really didn't hold any major titles. In fact, the biggest thing he was known for in the WWF was a feud with DiBiase, in which DiBiase bought off his valet, I know that's not right. Sharmell, that's Booker T's wife. Sapphire. And it also led to a team up at the 1990 Survivor Series, 90-92 Survivor Series, that saw the debut of Mark Calloway, aka The Undertaker. Let's see. American Dream. Kurt Hennig, aka Mr. Perfect. His son is in professional wrestling right now. Curtis Hawkins. I don't remember if he still wrestles with the WWE or if he's gone elsewhere, like Ring of Honor or TNA or whatever they're calling themselves this week. Jerry the King Lawler. Nick Bockwinkel. And again, some of these are going to be names that I don't remember, like Bockwinkel. I don't remember him. I think he was like 70s era. Mr. Fuji, who of course was a former wrestler in, I want to say Korea, but I'm not for sure, turned manager, of course managed some of the most famous tag teams in the 80s and 90s, being Demolition, oh Lord, what were they? The Warlord and the Barbarian, Powers of Pain or something like that. See, what other teams were there? Ming and Andre. No, that was Bobby Heenan. In fact, throughout most of Ming's career as Haku, it was Bobby Heenan he was managed by. There are other very famous, most famously Yokozuna. He managed him. In fact, I think that is probably by far the biggest, in more ways than one, the biggest guy Fuji ever repped for. Both and in terms of sheer size, Yokozuna was a very heavy guy, and, well, let's face it, Yokozuna was also a very big name in the mid-90s. Let's see. We got Fuji. We got the Sheik. Now, this is not the Iron Sheik. The Iron Sheik is one guy. The Sheik is another guy. The Sheik is Sabu's uncle. In fact, this is the guy who trained Sabu. Of course, he was inducted posthumously. And finally, Jim Ross in 2007 was also inducted because, of course, they inducted Lawler the same year. Might as well induct Lawler's commentary partner. Good old JR. Who, as I remember now, does podcasts and, streams and stuff like that, where he talks about professional wrestling and professional wrestling news. 2008 saw Nature Boy get inducted and then retire. Quote, retire. This is also the year that saw The Rock's father and grandfather both get inducted. High Chief Peter Maivia and Soul Man Rocky Johnson. Mae Young, who I will again not get into. Eddie Graham, Gordon Solly. So again, some of these are names I will not get into because of the fact that I either one, don't know anything about them, or two, right now is probably the worst time to get into them. Let's see. Gordon Solly, Steve Austin, of course, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, whom, let's face it, without Steamboat, Flair wouldn't be as big as he was, or maybe it's the other way around for that one. and neither would Savage. Cowboy Bill Watts, who ran one of the territories in the 80s. Other than that, I don't know much about him. Howard Finkel, who is a legendary ring announcer. You would best know him by the sound of his voice. As you can tell, I can still do that voice very well. I haven't done it since I was a little kid until recently, and yet I still got it. But he was known for calling guys to the ring. Got Koko B. Ware. A lot of people don't know who he is nowadays. He was kind of a bit of a mid-card guy at best in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s. He had a brief tag team with Owen Hart. Other than that, he was known for bringing a bird to the ring. We got the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, in 2010. At some point I crossed over from 08 to 09 and didn't even realize it. But we're crossing into 2010 now, so... oh god, Antonio Inoki. If you do not know who this guy is, look him up. He had a very famous bit with Earthquake back in the day, where they started to shoot on each other during a match, if I remember the right guy. I could be wrong. This might be the guy, the other guy I'm thinking of. It could be, and he was big in the 50s and 60s, I want to say. And he was known for being very big. Very tall. Of course, Wendy Richter, who recently has come out as being attached to some scandal, though she's been on the receiving end of said scandal. Let's see. Maurice Mad Dog Vachon. Of course, famous father of Luna Vachon. Gorgeous George, Stu Hart. And that's the end of the 2010 class. I'm going to cut here because I'm nearing the max of my time limit. However, I will state this. The list goes on and will probably take at least another 2 more pieces to do. But, with that being said, if you are new to this channel and you like what you see, hit the subscribe button down below. Whether or not you are subscribed, or once you subscribe, hit the bell icon, so that way you will be informed of when my videos come out. And let it be known, I am the Wrestling Man, one of the biggest fans in professional wrestling, who has some of the most interesting takes on wrestling. And welcome. Bye.